Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are doing the Steam Fall List Spring Cleaning cleanup for is what I'm calling this. Basically, because I look at every single game that comes out on Steam every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Also doing live streams, play Hearthstone, and talk about video game news at the same time. I have this incredibly large follow list that we are in the process of making a lot shorter because we're evaluating games to see if they're good enough to go to the wish list, which means that I actually want to buy them and cover them on my channel, or if they're not good enough and then they just leave the follow list and make room for all the new games that come out. Today we'll be going through games starting with the letter Q and probably R, because quite frankly there's only about 9 games that start with the letter Q, and that's a good thing because that tells me probably next time I need to clean up the follow list in 6 months, maybe a year from now, I will be able to go through several letters and have a shorter experience. But there's really no reason as a content creator to not make content while you're working if you can get away with it, so I figured I'd show my thinking patterns here while we're doing this. What we're going to be looking for, and the first game we'll use as an example, this Quantum Retribution, is either something unique about the game, either visually or in the gameplay mechanic, or if somehow I thought the audio was unique. I don't know how I would know that since I'm not listening to any of the audio playing in the videos, and that I suppose puts audio-based games in a bad light in general on Steam, because I don't know how many people really listen to the audio when these things play. But anyways, I'm looking for something unique that would make me make a special exception. If I don't see anything unique that makes me think about making a special exception, then we're looking for what I call relevancy. I want to see the game have at least 25 verified purchase reviews. You can see this game has only 7. Or if the game hasn't reached that level by January 1st, 2019, I need to give up on it because it's been 6 months. They've had their time to make their first impression. There clearly, as I have seen so many games now, seems to be a lot of people that just throw their games out on Steam. And you know, sometimes you'll get some indie developers who will complain about their games not getting highlighted and promoted on Steam, and that's kind of not what Steam does. Like, Steam, if you pay them, will promote your game on the front page. If you agree to let them put your game on sale, they'll put it on sale. But the recommendation engine that they have, that admittedly it's a second generation recommendation engine and it's still not that good, it really is 100% about putting games that would make the player interested in purchasing them, or putting games in front of players that would entertain the players. It's not really about promoting things. It's kind of the opposite of the YouTube recommendation algorithm, quite frankly, where the YouTube recommendation algorithm will just do crazy things or promote the biggest streamers or the biggest content creators on YouTube to everybody when there's really no personal connection or reason to do that. There are definitely some other elements that we'll check out for. Maybe if I recognize the publisher or developer, that might say something good or bad about it. This clearly is on the following list and isn't going to make it to the wish list. Red flags will be also the price. $7 for a horror game is not terrible, but graphically this does look pretty bad. What this really fails to show is any kind of gameplay mechanic. There's no life bar, there's no hands that pick up anything, there's no enemies that you interact with. You just have this upside down, probably jump scare enemy. So this kind of feels like it's a walking simulator more than anything else, a walking simulators type horror game. Other things to keep under mind is also the fact that horror games have been able to make low effort Unity asset flip horror games. Developers have been able to make low effort Unity asset flip horror games a lot better these days. So you can see something that visually looks 3, 4, 5 times better than what I'm seeing in this game, and still it's not a good game. It really has no gameplay mechanic, and watching this trailer, it's just a bunch of flashing lights. So you then have to read the description, and I don't really read descriptions as looking for a red flag. We'll be looking for games that are single player, or at least have some single player. Here you have a script that seems like this was copy and pasted, and they didn't even bother to correct it. Just save 75% on ampersand game name ampersand. That is ridiculous. So clearly this developer and publisher paid somebody to do this, and they didn't even do it right. Now, what is sometimes a red flag, and I think this might be the only instance in which we actually see this on the fault list, is I have seen a more than average abundance of games that are English and Russian that are very low effort games, or English and Chinese that are very low effort games. What does that really mean? Well, there's a lot of people in those countries, so it's not surprising that in those countries that aren't particularly well developed as video game centers of development, there's a lot of people that either don't know what a modern video game should look like, or don't care, and are just trying to run a scam. That's pretty much what I would say this is. It's not, I don't want to really get into the mindset of the developers, but I will call it something that looks like a very low effort game, regardless of whether it's intentionally that way, or if this was really the best they could do. Meanwhile, recommendations for other games are all over the place for most things that have very few reviews. The number of negative reviews in this game is 7. The number of positive is 1. That's a big problem. That is, in fact, probably the highest negative ratio I've seen. Well, I probably have seen something that is actually 100% negative, but that is a real bad tale. I really don't know why this is on the follow list, actually. Even 6 months ago, my standards should not have been this low. I don't know what I was thinking. Let's move on. That one is leaving the follow list. Now, these pages I'm going to have to reload because they're taking up so much RAM, and they didn't load correctly. That, and on top of that being part of the issue, the other part of the issue is I opened so many Chrome pages that Steam thought I was doing a denial of service attack and stopped allowing pages to load. Web servers in particular are still kind of picky about being very hyperactive about loading pages. If you try to open more than 20 or 30 at the same time, that seems unrealistic. This next game we have is called Quarto. Now, since I put this on the follow list, I have come to know Asmodee Digital pretty well, and unfortunately they're kind of well known for making digital versions of real-world board games, but also making terrible digital versions of real-world board games. And I think this probably falls right in that same category. Even if it doesn't, it falls under the other category of being irrelevant. It just, with one user review, nobody bought this game, nobody cared about it. It looked slightly interesting. I'm always interested in the idea of following a new board game, learning some new rules. This looks like it's a 3D checkers, chess style game that if it had any relevancy, I probably would have a decent time playing for at least a short time. But it kind of is a waste of time to play this game also. This is single player only, so you can't even do local co-op or local player versus player. And any board game is inevitably compared to Tabletop Simulator, which you can get for $19.99, but then there's a ton of DLC for specific games, so you might pay a lot more than that. That being said, having one single location to play tabletop games, probably a lot better of an idea, and I've yet to see anything compete with it. The only review here is not even in my language. It's in German. So that's not helpful. While we're doing the setup, we may also run into some adult games, so I have a blur function that I'll use to just look at the screenshots and make sure it's family friendly for YouTube before I show it off. Also, screenshots will sometimes not load in the first time, so I'll have to go in circles. That's not me being weird, that's just trying to get the pages to load. This is another game that's not making it to the wish list. There aren't too many words that start with the letter Q in any language. So, of course, there aren't too many words that start with Q in too many games that start with Q on Steam. There is no real reason to think, oh, there should be a few games starting with any letter of the alphabet. If all the good games started with the letter A, so be it. But it will definitely feel weird once we go through all 9 of these and I decide none of them are worth putting on the wish list, which is a very good possibility. Next game we're considering is called Quest Hunter. It says it's an action loot game. It's not early access, because that might have been a problem. Let's see, isometric action RPG game where your choice drives the stories, find tons of treasures and secrets, solve puzzles, equip your character, level up. To me it looks kind of like a Diablo clone, for lack of a better term, and seems like the video does not want to load. Oh man, we are really just... I think I was at 84% of 16 gigabytes of RAM used, and I closed tabs, but man, there's just so many open still. There is a problem with playing an RPG game like this because they kind of butt up against JRPGs and AAA RPGs. It's kind of hard to justify spending maybe 20 hours or 60 hours or maybe even 100 or 200 hours in a game like this that doesn't look that great and is zoomed out, when you know you also have things like Dragon's Quest or Final Fantasy to play. The amount of polish starts to fall apart. Or even you have older games like remakes of Secret of Mana, things like that, that might look exactly the same as this but have more relevancy. The 80% positive over the lifetime of 535 reviews gives it a good indication. $14.99 isn't really a problem for the amount of expense. 70 Steam achievements doesn't seem too wrong. Kind of what I want to see here is, well, we're looking for trouble basically. We want to see these 120 negative reviews, and we want to see what the average playtime is. So here you have somebody that says the game is fun for about 2 hours and then just is tedious. This is the type of review that's not really that useful. It's just people yelling, and they played for 10 hours. This one played for 12 hours. This game is enjoyable with decent mechanics. You'll eventually hit a wall where you need to collect 1,000 wood and 800 stone for a quest, which is a pretty huge grind. After 20 minutes of farming and not coming anywhere close, I just came up. That's ridiculous for an offline game. If I miss something to bypass the quest or an easy way to collect, please let me know, otherwise I can't recommend the game. Developer put a response here. Let's see what boilerplate response. It's like, hi, you can buy resources at the Fast Hands NPC in your camp. It's kind of, and then they responded back, thanks, I checked this out, and although it's kind of pricey at 2 coins per wood and stone, that's manageable. However, there's no way to bulk buy, so you require sitting there clicking all day to buy each. So, the solution, not really solved. Does not have a LAN connection. Does this have any multiplayer support? Local co-op, online co-op, but yeah, no, I guess LAN, local area network. Not that many people would really care about that. Good game, but crashes, bugs, combat is boring, enemies are boring, secrets are useless after a while. Sometimes it felt like missions make you run around instead of doing actual stuff. Unbalanced abilities are boring, one-dimensional gameplay. So this is an interesting point to hinge on, certainly when considering a game like this, by the majority of reviewers. And trust me, as far as I can tell, you can't review manipulate to the point where you have 400 extra positive reviews to balance out 100 negative ones. Majority of people seem to see what this game is and like it for what it is. From my perspective, though, I really only have enough time in a lifetime to play a few games. So Quest Hunter may be getting held to a higher standard here, and these images just don't want to load. This came out March 8th, 2019, so this is basically a brand new game, and Two Zombies Games as a developer hasn't made anything else. I really think this probably is a game that's just has to be held to a higher standard, because really I only want to play the top 10 RPGs, and if I was going to play something like this, I probably would play Torchlight, which is something that's green, so I already own it. That works when I'm logged in. The website will log me out pretty soon. Torchlight, Torchlight 2, these other RPGs have been suggested. Dungeon Siege, Torchlight 2 again. Let's see, 22,000 reviews on this game, so there's a lot more relevancy there. Apparently Tank Quest is on my wish list. I'm kind of just full up on RPGs, particularly Western RPGs, and there's nothing in the negative reviews, not that I expect the negative reviews to say anything, but also nothing in the screenshots that indicates that you would see any kind of different gameplay or any kind of different story here. It seems like this is a very generic Tolkien-esque European style fantasy world with dwarves and goblins and things like that. I really don't see how this could make it to the list. It's probably not bad, though. If you love RPGs, if you've already played Torchlight 1 and 2, if you've played Diablo 1, 2, and 3 several times, it makes sense. It's just that RPGs in particular, them being two large categories, then subsected into Western RPGs and Japanese or Asian RPGs, is already not really my style of game. And so if I'm going to play any of them, it's going to be a limited amount of interaction in the first place. And it's really a case of I just have to be true to myself and say, yeah, I'm not going to play 5 100-hour RPGs per year until I've caught up with the 20 best RPGs around. At best, I'm going to play 1 or 2 RPGs in a year, and I'm coming this kind of from the perspective of a fan of the Borderlands series, which has RPG elements, and so many games do have RPG elements, but I don't think you would really classify Borderlands first and foremost as an RPG, you would classify it as a first-person shooter or loot shooter before that. Next we have a game called Quest Room Hanan, which is pretty easy to dismiss because it's 65% of 58 reviews. This seems like it's just a basic puzzle room, escape the room kind of idea, but not even what you would classify as a modern escape the room game. This came out October 25th, 2018. Usually when you're playing an escape the room game, the room is pretty big. It's designed to look like what an escape room would look like in the real world, where there could be multiple people in the room and you could be walking around. You shouldn't be at arm's length of every puzzle. This looks more like something you would make for somebody who was sitting in VR and was just going to spin around in a chair. That being said, there's no VR support here, so then it just makes it look like an adventure game that's pretty poorly thought out. I wish there were more Egyptian themed games in general, but most of the ones that I find are not good. Let's see, and what's getting recommended here is not much of anything. So yeah, this is an easy game to remove from the fall list. So let's move over to the next game. Next we are considering a game called Quiet as Stone. This came out November 20th, 2018, and it has only 6 user reviews, which is not enough for them to even bother to show a percentage. What this looks like on first glance is a walking simulator, but it's not that. It's some kind of cutting trees and moving trees. Like, remake the world in a minimalistic, slow game for casual creators. Discover the long lost history, create your own scenes. This description makes it seem like what this probably is just a demo of an idea somebody programmed and now they're trying to sell. Like, this really does not look recognizable as an actual game. And this is 25 minutes, this video. Oh my goodness. 25 minutes for the first video, 9 minutes for the next video, 7 minutes for the next video. Is that because this takes like real time to grow plants? It's tagged the nature, atmospheric, and sandbox. It looks not like a game. It looks like it's a probably an asset flip of a development tool trying to pretend that it's a game. $9.99 right now. English only is the language. Let's see. You have a negative review, you have a positive review, some other positive reviews, some other negative reviews. First few minutes seem interesting, then it becomes boring. You can't save your progress, so you have to start over every time you play. Very limited in what you can do and add to each scene, and each scene is almost the same as the last scene. Not much variety, slow and boring from my point. Refund requested, log. Yeah, I don't see anything here that looks like a game mechanic. This feels ridiculous. It feels like, how did anybody even think they could sell this on Steam alone, let alone for $10? And unfortunately, Steam is very libertarian about how they run their store, so they let people sell almost anything. They don't curate for quality, which many people have argued against. Certainly most storefronts, if you go into a Target or a Walmart or any other supermarket, there's 100% curation of what ends up on the shelves. Steam, not so much, being a digital storefront. Even Amazon.com, which would be a fair comparison, does a decent amount of curation. Not an amazingly good amount of curation, but they certainly don't let total garbage on their storefront. Next game we have to consider is called Quiver. I believe this is a VR game with archery. I'm a bit of a sucker for archery games, and the idea of doing archery in VR, particularly in this method, is kind of interesting because you're shooting the arrows to teleport yourself. Unfortunately, most VR games really do just boil down to you standing in one place and shooting at enemies running towards you. This feels like this might be a little bit tower defense-y also, where you're trying to stop enemies from crossing a certain point. What I'm trying to think here is this the best example of an archery game I've seen so far for VR? Or is this not the best example? Now, for VR games, I'm also at the point where I'm fairly certain I'd never actually buy a VR headset. So even if I do want to keep this game in consideration, I'm only going to leave it on the follow list. And at some point, either VR is going to get really cheap, or really there are going to be a lot of really good VR games and I get a headset, or enough years will pass and I'll just say, well, forget VR games, I'm taking them all off the follow list. I think for Quiver, 92% positive, 429 reviews, it is one that should stay on the follow list. It is asking $20, $19.99, and it came out in 2018, but there usually is a premium on VR games. They usually are all way too overpriced. So I probably, if I spent an extra amount of time going through the follow list a second time and found all the games that have archery in it, I could probably get rid of 2 or 3 of them when I compare them side by side. I just don't really have time for that. Single player and online multiplayer also available. So 2 people would have to own this game and have VR. But yeah, Quiver deserves to stay on the follow list. Next game we have, however, might change my opinion on that, is Quiver Vanguard, which came out 2018. So when we look at this developer, Blue Tech, they made Quiver, which came out June 18th, 2018, and then in less than a year they came out with Quiver Vanguard. And in between that time, they also, a few days earlier, just 3 days earlier from the publish date here, came out with this game, Marvel It Up, which is already on my wish list. So maybe they make good games, but they certainly don't know anything about separating out their publishing and announcements. Let's see, a bite-sized intro to VR archery. Is this free? No, it's $14.99 in a polished, replayable, magical environment. Why would you need to make another game that is basically the same game as the one you made before? That's strange. And this one has 4 user reviews. It seems to me like maybe they added a few elements, but then they also hurt themselves, because now it feels like they're trying to sell the same product multiple times. Feels like they're doing something shady. This is why you don't really do that. Release games so within the same year. And there's only 4 reviews. Let's see. The one negative review is from somebody who got it for free. Let's see. First impressions weren't great, to say the least. The main reason the review being negative was also the first flaw in the nose. Flaw being the controls and the feel of the gameplay. Alright. 4 out of 10. So apparently you need to customize the controls from that review. Basically, I just skimmed the entire review. Well, I guess this also just stays on the follow list. Both of these games will be side by side, and so if I ever were to buy a VR headset, would get both of this. It seems also people who purchased Quiver before this came out got this game as a free upgrade, but people who didn't buy the game when it first came out instead would have to pay $19.93 to get both, and they made the special effort of making a bundle to see that happen instead of doing the more honorable thing, which I would say, which would be to remove Quiver, the original game, and re-release it as Quiver Vanguard, or patch Quiver as Quiver Vanguard and not have two different store pages. There definitely feels like there's a little bit of shadiness going on here, and that kind of irritates me. So I'm half thinking I don't want this on my wish list, and then I'm half thinking maybe I should just leave it on the follow list. This says it supports VR, but it doesn't seem like it actually requires VR. Yeah, because we're not getting that red box that says it requires a VR headset. See, it says Quiver Vanguard is a fantastic intro to VR or a fantastic way to kill some time. The "or" there would imply that this is not VR required. Yet there seems to be no indication that that's really the case. And see, that would make a little bit more sense to release the game as a non-VA version of it. Non-VR version of it, but that's not getting said either. So I'm left confused. So in the end, left confused and in frustration, I'm just going to remove both of those from the follow list. There are other archery games, and there's just a little too many red flags here in the business practices of Blue Tech or the publisher, or both. I am uncertain whether I could purchase this and play it without VR. I am uncertain why two different copies of the game that look extremely similar were released in the course of the same 12 months. I'm uncertain about how good the game particularly is either. So, moving on. I spent probably way too much time on that. Next game we have to consider is Quote. It says it's a twisted hand-drawn action RPG. Now, I'm not going to immediately reject all RPGs, but if it looks pretty generic as an RPG, I might reject it. It seems like the idea is you're in a world where it says a fantastical world of absolute ignorance, all shall be pure of thought. So it's like a world that hates in knowledge, and then why all these pictures on the wall, all these drawings. It looks a little bit like the game Bastion, but I'm not sure how the gameplay really plays here. I know of at least a couple of games that were kind of like this description. We're seeing a lot of people walk around here. Seems to be like a generic hack and slash game, but then also it seemed like there was some turn-based attacks. So I'm not sure if this is turn-based RPG attacks or regular attacks. It seems maybe the boss fights are turn-based and then the normal attacks are just there. This definitely does seem weird, but not with any kind of consistency or understanding. What I'm seeing is just a bunch of weird imagery right now, and I'm not getting it. I don't know if I'm being particularly dense right now, or if the game is just being obtuse. This video's showing me basically the exact same thing I'm seeing before. Alright, well, it doesn't matter. As we scroll down, this is 80% positive of 10 user reviews, which is not enough. It came out January 31st, 2017. We're recording this in the middle of 2019. It's been out and on early access for way longer than 6 months. This has to leave the fall list. I am not willing to play any game any game that is unfinished, and this seems like a pure example of an unfinished project, and probably abandoned project too. I'm not seeing any updates being posted as far as comments on the website, on the store page. So, quote, is leaving the follow list. Easy enough. And so then I suppose the decision comes down to it. We've been going 37 minutes. Do I end the recording now and make another recording that starts with games starting with R? Or do we just move forward? And I guess, considering how most YouTube videos are about 10 minutes long or less these days, 30 minutes is more than long enough. There's been exactly 0 games that have made it to the wishlist. Everything starting with Q has been rejected from the fall list. That's not super surprising. We only covered about 10 games, and each game though clearly takes at least 5 minutes to cover. Well, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. That helps me with YouTube and tells them that my videos are worth watching. When you subscribe, click the notification bell, click the pull down option, make sure you're checking all notifications if you want all notifications. That's true for any page you're subscribed to. If you want to get backup notifications, you can friend or follow me on a myriad of social media sites. There are a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon. Or the whole reason I'm doing the follow list cleanup is because I'm cleaning up the wish list too. If you want to support me that way, you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list, or just gift me a gift card, or just gift me any game you'd like to see me cover, all of which would be also greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.